Hiko Shima is a pessimist who never knew what love meant growing up, mostly because of his very wealthy family never showing it. Things take a turn for the worse when he gets into an accident and loses his mother alongside the proper function in his right hand. His father laments that he has ruined his expectations and adds that there's no space for a disgrace in the Shima family. They then ship Tomohiko off to the mountain villa in Chiba, where he wonders if he'll be better off dying alone. He had concluded that Chiba would be his final resting place, but on one cold night, a hooded lady makes her way to his doorstep. She interrupts his overthinking, and when he opens the door, introduces herself as Yuzuki, adding that she has come to be his bride. As they walk inside, Hiko remembers when his father promised to buy him a bride, seeing as no one in their family would take care of him. He wraps Yuzuki in his coat so she wouldn't catch a cold and continues to wonder why they send a bride to a dead man walking. He shows her to her room with an expressionless face and just as quickly leaves her alone. The next day, he's still lamenting about getting no sleep when he overhears Yuzuki cleaning the house. The noise shocks him, so he comes outside to inquire what all the noise is about. An overexcited Yuzuki is on her knees as she bids him a good morning. She then declares that she wants to be useful to him. She gets him some water, but immediately he washes his face. She intrudes to dry it off. As if that's not enough, she grabs his face and complains about his dark circles. This freaks Hiko out, so he locks himself in his room once again, wondering if every day will be like this. The next day, she begs his pardon as he's reading and basically empties his room so she can clean it. She then heads into town and returns with a boatload of groceries. She even makes breakfast, but all of this doesn't make Hiko like her. Our boy is busy having a bath when she interrupts him, threatening to rinse his back. All of his efforts to stop her fail, so he just sits quietly as she cleans it. He takes another look at her and concludes that she must be a pampered lady. When he mentions it, she admits that she has 2 worries. Yuzuki proceeds to let her hair down and laments about how full and wavy it is. This pushes Hiko to laughter, but he apologizes soon enough. She tells him not to bother and adds that she's happy that it made him laugh. Our boy concludes that he has had enough of her, so he kicks her out of the bathroom. She braids her hair again and stares at the mirror. This brings back memories of her time at the all-girls school. She and her friends had a beautiful last supper, and she even got told that she would make a beautiful bride. Yuzuki used this opportunity to tell them about her parents' debt and how she'll be sent to marry a lender's son. It was an emotional moment, and her friend made her promise to be happy. It's December 31st, 1921, and the year is ending. Hiko, on the other hand, trudges out of bed because he can't sleep. He keeps thinking about how he is a disappointment to his entire family, but Yuzuki strolls into the room at that moment. She lights a fire and asks that she stay with him. She then leaves to fetch some tea leaves to boil. As she's making tea, Hiko begins to rage about how she must feel unfortunate to be stuck with a one-handed pessimist like him. He then screams that she can't let out her frustration, but she simply serves him a cup of tea. The tea soothes him, and Yuzuki makes it better when she sings a lullaby Hiko's mom used to sing to settle his sister. Unfortunately, the negative thoughts return as he laments about feeling unneeded and hurt. He admits that he spends every night hoping that he won't wake up, and adds that he's sure no one will mourn him. Yuzuki instinctively approaches him and pats his head. She then pulls him into her embrace, leaving Hiko to ask why she's so kind to him when they're not even related. She then admits that when his dad bought her for 10,000 yen, she was scared about the kind of man she would marry, but that changed when he put his coat around her. She knew at that moment that he was kind and that he would cherish her. As she promises to cherish him too, our boy gets red in the cheeks. Before he can escape, Yuzuki grabs his hand and asks that they sleep together, seeing as it's their first New Year's together. Hiko heads to his room where he begins to hyperventilate because he has never been in such a situation before. He quickly consults a dirty magazine and Yuzuki steps in at that moment. She simply lays out her futon, much to Hiko's surprise. It then dawns on him that she literally meant sleeping together. He turns off the lights and buries himself in his futon, only for Yuzuki to ask if he wanted to share one futon. She then adds that she can't do that until they are married and promises to keep herself for Hiko. She then bids him a good night, leaving our boy to wonder the type of person she is. He sleeps well for the first time and wakes up to see Yuzuki right beside him. She presents breakfast and adds that it's a dish special for the new year. After having a taste, our boy can't hide how delicious it is. But memories of their previous conversation flashed through his mind. He then asks for seconds as he reminds himself that he is still a pessimist. Later that day, Hiko walks in on Yuzuki as she's taking her bath but is quick enough to run outside. She later approaches him to apologize for showing her shameful side, but but Hiko reiterates that he didn't see anything, claiming that there was a lot of steam in the bathroom. She proceeds to serve his meal and rests on his shoulder as she asks if it's delicious. Our boy isn't used to this, so he blushes once again. It gets worse when she picks some rice from his face and Hiko has to remind himself that he despises the world. They're interrupted when a letter comes in from Shima Tamayoshi, Hiko's dad. Apparently, Tamaki and Tamayo have received offers of marriage. His dad feels like news of them having a brother who can't use his hand and is stuck in the mountains will ruin these potential marriages, so he decided to publicly declare that Hiko died in the car accident. That evening, Yuzuki tries calling him out for dinner, but Hiko tells her that he wants to be left alone. She even made his favorite, but he didn't care. The next day, she realizes that he still hasn't come out of his room, so she goes on about doing the laundry and getting some groceries. Later on, she decides to override his request and enters his room with some food. She'd noticed that he has a heavy fever, so she tends to him immediately. Meanwhile, our boy has a trance about getting discarded by his father and visualizes his siblings as they take the man's side on the matter. He comes out of the trance wishing that he would die and sits up to continue his negative ramblings, as he adds that Yuzuki will be free from her obligations too. He laughs hysterically and begins to entertain ways to take his life. Yuzuki, however, doesn't find this funny, so she clasps his cheeks and tells him not to say such things. He reveals what his father did and almost bursts into tears. He tries stopping himself, but Yuzuki just hugs him and tells him to let it all out. He later wakes up and doesn't see her anywhere around, so he tracks her down to the kitchen. He meets her cooking and humming to a song and admits that he got bored in his room. She asks for his forehead and confirms that his fever has gone down. Yuzuki wraps a blanket around him and returns to cooking. His conscience then judges him for ruining her best outfit, so he blurts out that they should go to Tokyo together. Upon arrival, Yuzuki is so excited to see so many people dressed in different colors. Meanwhile, our boy begins to spin out as he wonders why he left the house. Some bad memories come back to him, and he sucks it up because of Yuzuki. They continue sightseeing as they step into a huge mall. She's even more excited when she sees so many different colors of kimonos, leaving Hiko to conclude that she's like a child. Our boy then gives her the go-ahead to pick a new kimono, seeing as it's his fault for ruining her other one. Yuzuki goes through multiple fabrics until she settles on 2. She then shows them to Hiko, asking him to pick one. He notices that she likes them both, so he tells her to buy them. She freaks out because she feels like they're too expensive, but Hiko declares that he has the money. She then walks back happily as she hugs the fabrics. She thanks our boy profusely, but he still feels so bad that he apologizes for the other kimono. He asks if it had sentimental value, and she admits that it's the first one she ever sewed. He freaks out because he thinks he's done something that can't be undone, but Yuzuki tells him that the new fabric is all she can think about. She adds that it's the first one her husband bought for her, so she'll cherish it for the rest of her life, and maybe hand it down to her daughter. He wonders how she can say such things with a straight face, and tilts his cap to hide how much he's blushing. She gets excited and scared when she sees an escalator and later visits a perfume shop. They continue touring until Yuzu sets her sights on ice cream. It's obvious that she wants some, so Hiko gets it for her. She enjoys it so much that she tries to give him some. This leads to people mumbling that kids these days are vulgar. They shamefully stop, only for Hiko to notice a young boy enjoying his ice cream. This reminds him of his father and how he's telling everyone that his son is dead. Yuzu notices, so she thanks him and declares that they need to make their train home. On the train, she mentions that thinking positively makes life better, and our boy acknowledges that she says some profound things sometimes. Soon enough, she falls asleep on his body, and the shock pushes her away. He then catches her before she falls and places her back on himself. After that, Yuzu works on her kimono for the next month and presents the finished work to Hiko. He's so captivated by her beauty that it becomes obvious to Yuzu. She then tells him not to be so embarrassed. Their little moment is turned around when Hiko's little sister, Tamako, interrupts them. She claims that she came to enjoy the family villa, so Hiko reminds her that it's his home. She then reminds him that he's dead. Tamako tips the guys that brought her bags and they happily exit the house. She then approaches Yuzuki and mocks her for being so little, going as far as asking what primary school she's in. Yuzu tries defending herself by announcing that she's a 14-year-old adult woman, but this doesn't deter Tamako from mocking her. Hiko then scolds her, telling her that she should be more respectful because Yukuzi is older than her. Tamako laughs because she's only 12, but still bigger than her. She then pats her head and gets the poor girl to admit that she's nothing like an adult. The same Yuzu shows Tamako to her room, but she picks the one closer to the sun instead. Yuzu doesn't argue and proceeds to bring in her things, air out her futon, and even announce that she's right next door if her guest needs anything. Hiko later apologizes on his sister's behalf and is baffled to find that Yuzuki isn't even mad about her. He then explains that she's always been the smartest sibling but also the most cryptic. None of this sways Yuzuki from wanting to be her friend. As Hiko announces that he doesn't think it's possible, Tomoko steps in. Yuzu then expresses how pumped up she is about the dinner she's making for her, but Tomoko dampens her mood by calling her childish. Our boy drills his sister about her real reason for coming, seeing as he's already dead to the family. In turn, she laughs about how everyone back home shed fake tears over his death, including their father. She then announces that she would like to dine alone, and asks Yuzuki to bring the food to her room. A sad Tomohiko tells his betrothed to do the same for him. The next day, our boy refuses to have breakfast despite all of Yuzuki's efforts. He then sits up and apologizes once again for his sister's foul mouth. In turn, Yuzuki approaches him and asks that they take a walk. He's reluctant, but she wears him down by making a cute face. They bid Tomoko goodbye and begin their journey around the mountain. Hiko, on the other hand, is surprised by how beautiful the scenery is around the villa. They continue their walk and make a pit stop at the Inari statue, where Yuzuki likens it to a fairy tale. Hiko finally smiles and it gladdens his betrothed. She then heads towards the spring nearby and takes a sip of the cold water. She asks Hiko to join her, but he can't because of his hand. Yuzu then fetches some water, and a shy Hiko hesitates before drinking from her palms. Afterwards, it becomes awkward as both of them blush. As they walk, she grabs hold of his hand, and this continues until they arrive at the top of the mountain. The scenery is so beautiful that Hiko admits to himself that Yuzu is the only thing similar to the spring storm he's witnessing. When they get home, Yuzu gets to cooking something with such a nice aroma that it gets Tomoko to ask what she's making. The girl is surprised to find that you can make milk caramel candy from scratch. Yuzuki laughs at her because Hiko just stands and watches her cook. Tomoko quips that the girl must hate being with her brother, seeing as she was sent to pay a debt. Yuzu blatantly denies this and expresses how much she loves doing things for Hiko. This makes Tomoko admit that she's a strange one. She later hands Hiko a jar of candy, and he says she shouldn't have gone through the stress. She brushes this aside as she feeds him the candy. He then admits that it has a warm and delicious taste, and this makes Yuzu very happy. On the flip side, Tomoko is really grumpy about it, so Yuzu hands her a candy, which she throws away as she calls them a couple of idiots and stomps away. That night, as she lays in bed, she remembers how her father had no time for her and even paid maids to handle her. She remembers how all the girls in school hated her because of her height and status. It's 3 in the morning and a storm is brewing. Tomoko is scared out of her mind with each thunderstrike and remembers that Yuzuki is next door. She really needs to pee but is scared to go by herself, so she gets Yuzuki to escort her. On their way, there's another thunderstrike and it scares Tomoko so much that she pees on herself. Tears come to her eyes, but Yuzuki quickly drags her inside the bathroom and pours water on her. She instructs her to get into the tub and immediately leaves to get a fire going, leaving Tomoko to wonder why she would do that for her. Afterwards, Yuzuki combs her hair, and this confuses Tomoko even further, seeing as she's not used to people caring about the feelings of others. Another thunderstrike makes her hug Yuzuki, and she suggests that they sleep together. Tomoko later admits that she had never laid with someone before and breaks into a story of how there's no love in their family, and how it got worse when she went to the all-girls school. She took a break from school, and all her dad did was compare her to Tomohiko. It became too much, so she came to the mountain villa to get away. Yuzuki then announces that she would love her if she was her big sister. Tomoko doesn't believe it, so Yuzuki holds her hand and comforts her. She then hugs her when another thunderstrike goes off and sings her a lullaby. The next day, Hiko is in shock when she sees both girls cooking and getting along. Afterwards, they eat and laugh, leaving Hiko even more confused. Tomoko then kicks him out so she and Yuzuki can have some girl time. Hiko is going through his library and discovers that he has read everything there. He gets distracted by the sound of music. The girls are having a nice time as Tomoko cosplays her hair like that of Tori, the pop star. Anyway, she suggests that Yuzuki try it out and ends up unbraiding her hair. She's so excited by how fluffy it is she doesn't notice when Hiko steps into the room. His sister immediately kicks him out again and reminds Yuzuki that she hasn't done any housework. She gets on it despite the hot weather and later fans Hiko while he reads. He realizes that it's been over a year since she came to live with him, and then remembers when she said that she wants to love him. This memory makes his eyes water, and he becomes embarrassed. She tries to get him some tea, but falls on his body almost immediately. Yuzuki admits that she felt dizzy and tries to get off of him. He tells her that it's fine, so she takes advantage and rests some more. After a while, she announces that she feels better and leaves to fetch the tea. Unfortunately, she drops to the ground in the hallway, and Hiko doesn't know what to do. At that moment, Tomoko comes running and offers to carry her to bed. Hiko tries to be helpful, but she tells him that he'll just drop Yuzuki. They lay her in Hiko's room, but when she comes to, she still tries to take care of him. This pushes Tamako to resolve to go to town and find a doctor. Hiko asks what he's supposed to do, and his sister sarcastically tells him to cool Yuzuki's forehead. After she leaves, Hiko struggles to fetch water from the well, and even after pulling it off, the bucket falls from his hand at the entrance. Just then, Tamako arrives with a doctor and a nurse, and they meet Hiko wiping the floor. She stares at him condescendingly before offering to do it herself. Later on, the doctor exits Yuzuki's quarters and meets Hiko right outside. He pays the bill and gets an earful from the doctor, who already feels like the Shimas are rude and rich. He explains that Yuzuki is overworked and adds that the heat made her exhaustion even worse. He calls Yuzuki a servant and continues to lambast Hiko and his sister for treating everyone like servants, thinking that all they have to do is pay. The doctor yells that not everything can be fixed with money and uses Hiko's hand as a case study. Just then, Tamako comes in with her scary aura and shows the doctor out. She then explains that she was struggling in town when some villagers offered to bring her to the villa. She reiterates that Yuzuki is no servant and turns around to scold her brother for not saying anything. She meets him already saddened, and Hiko admits that he's the reason why Yuzuki was overworked. Tamako then falls quiet and walks off to care for her new friend. As he's all alone, Hiko realizes that he was just lucky that Tamako was around. He thinks about the day when someone as good as Yuzuki will become a victim because of his bad hand. That night, Tamako heads over to help Yuzuki change, but meets her already sitting upright. She's shocked by this, so she asks how her friend is doing, only for Yuzuki to ask after Hiko. She overdoes it and stops after realizing herself. Tamako then asks if she's really happy with her brother and adds how useless he is in emergencies. In turn, Yuzuki expresses worry over how lonely Hiko would be if she were to leave, and breaks into a story about her suicidal friend who was always sad. She had asked her mom for a way to cheer her up, but got told that it could only happen if the girl opens her heart to it. Little Yuzuki almost cried, so her mom told her to watch over her friend and hope that time and self-reflection would do the rest. Yuzuki then tells Tamako that she believes that staying by Hiko's side will make him accept happiness again one day. She quips that Yuzu thinks about her brother a lot, and the girl admits that he'll be her husband one day. The embarrassment after this makes her fever spike up. Later that night, our boy sits outside but can't help but think about Yuzu's welfare. Despite his sister telling him not to do anything, he pays his betrothed a visit, only to meet her chest bandages with blood on them. She winces and pleads with him to take them off, but he's too shy to do it. He tries calling Tamako, but she's busy soaking in the bathtub. He realizes that the bandages are squeezing Yuzu's ribs, so he gets a pair of scissors and cuts them off. Immediately after he does this, her huge jugs pop out. She falls shy and apologizes for showing our boy a disgraceful sight. She then explains that she's been hiding it since her school days, and freaks out because they keep growing without her height increasing. Hiko breaks into an apology for not being able to support her and suggests that they break up before something irreversible happens. In turn, she hugs him and tells him she's not some wimpy girl. The next day, he's woken up by Yuzuki shouting his name from the door. He begs her to rest one more day, but she claims to be fine. She then lets him know that she made Hitsumi and rushes to grab his hand. At that moment, he realizes he wants to make Yuzu happy. As they sit to eat, Hiko has to repeatedly remind himself that he's a pessimist. Just then, Tamako clears her throat and declares that she'll be going home the next day. She then adds that she wants to be a doctor, much to everyone's surprise. Hiko questions his sister about her plan to become a doctor, and she claims that she spoke to their uncle Tamasuke, who runs a clinic in Kobe, about it. She then reiterates that he gave her free rein to come by anytime. Yuzuki comes to Tamako's eye level as she asks her to be honest with them. She then admits when she saw Yuzu hurt, her body just moved to help her. She adds that she has become what she mocked and had thought that it would have been easier to help Yuzuki if she had medical knowledge. Apparently, Tamako wants to grow to become someone who helps people. Just as her brother and Yuzu start to believe in her, she announces that she'll marry a noble man once she's a doctor and have him build her a clinic and a villa. Later on, Hiko sits beside his sister outside and thanks her. This is strange, so she glares at him, and he then shyly thanks her again for caring for Yuzuki. This breaks her hard shell, but as she's blushing, Yuzu arrives and suggests that all three of them share a room. They all do, but she and Tamako hold hands and promise to see each other in Kobe. They then break into a soft song, leaving Hiko to his thoughts. The girls sleep off soon enough, and our boy realizes that out of all the siblings, he and Tamako were the closest. He wonders what he can do to ease her stress and remembers when Yuzuki patted his head. He then does the same to Tamako and reiterates that, despite what she thinks, he cherishes her the most. They see her off to the train station the next day, where Yuzuki hands her a lunchbox. They share an emotional moment before Tamako yells at her brother to look her in the eyes the next time he wants to pat her head. He becomes ashamed after realizing that she was awake, and the train sets off at that moment. Tamako opens her lunchbox and sees a jar of caramel sweets, one of almond macarons, and books from Hiko for her to read when she's bored. She admits that they're the people who have changed her life and blushes as she thanks them from afar. Come September 1st, 1922, Hiko sits to write, but gets interrupted by a stray cat. Yuzuki steps in with some tea soon enough and calls the stray cat Haru. They're still talking about it when the alarm rings, signifying the arrival of a market day. Yuzu immediately runs out to get some groceries from the village, and it reminds Hiko of the statements made by the doctor and his nurse. Upon reaching the market, villagers begin to gossip about Yuzu, whispering about her being the girl bought by the Shimas. Suddenly, she sees Hiko running towards her and stops to catch his breath. He then asks to carry the basket so they can shop together, and Yuzu smiles in agreement. As he carries the basket, he realizes his fear that they would be gossiping about her is actually valid. He then wonders how she's been taking it, only to see her grinning and blushing. When asked why she's grinning, Yuzu admits that she's happy to be shopping with Hiko, just like they did in Tokyo. It's almost like they're in their own world as they peruse different parts of the market. They come upon a stationery stand soon enough, and Yuzu gets something for Tamako and her friend Midori. Just then, she points out the neighboring book stand, and this excites Hiko so much when he checks it out. Yuzuki points out that he likes books a lot, and this reminds him of when he reminded his father that it was September 1st and the man pushed him away. Hiko quietly resumes his shopping for books after this. Later on, Yuzuki prepares a feast and casually mentions that it's his birthday. He's shocked that she knows, and she reveals that Tamako told her. She then hands him a handmade bookmark, which Hiko accepts wholeheartedly. His hands begin to shake from the gesture as he covers his eyes to hide the crying. In turn, Yuzu grabs his hand and tells him happy birthday. It seems like she was there for his past self, so much so that he bursts into tears and hugs her. Their beautiful moment is interrupted when Haru hisses in the distance. They're both shocked, and afterwards, Hiko offers to chase the cat out. Immediately he leaves, and Yuzuki's heart begins to beat audibly, and right outside our boy is hyperventilating. Another sound from Haru draws him to his room where he meets a strange girl petting the cat and reading his dirty magazine. She had broken his jar of caramel sweets and now smiles fearlessly at him. She approaches Hiko and introduces herself as a villager. This only scares him some more. She goes on to mock him for having so many dirty magazines and freaks him out some more by announcing that she's available if he wants to do dirty things to her. She mocks him again for thinking she was serious and then flees out the window when he asks her about the broken jar. Soon enough, Yuzuki comes to check on him, so our boy lies about the girl and keeps guarding the window so she won't catch a glimpse of the stranger. He then realizes that his bookmark is gone and remembers when the girl touched him. Hiko immediately rushed outside and drives his bike into the village, remembering how Yuzu poured her heart into this gift. She, on the other hand, takes a whiff of the air and realizes that it smells like a woman. Said woman laughs out loud as she brings out Hiko's wallet. She then notices the bookmark and decides to hold onto it too. Hiko finally catches a glimpse of the stranger as she enters her home. Her father calls her Rio and asks what she got from the Shima villa. She scolds him for putting her up to it, while he drinks all day and her dad slaps her to the ground. As her siblings come to comfort her, he goes through the wallet she stole, so she struggles it with him. Meanwhile, our boy is outside as he overhears things getting worse. He then grabs his head because memories of his father abusing him come to mind. He quietly returns home after this and meets Yuzu at the door. She had changed the jar, but our boy is too tired to be excited. He heads to bed where he concludes that his birthday can never be a good day. The next day as they have breakfast, Yuzu suggests that they visit the Inari shrine again, but he turns her down. He even refuses to top up his meal and heads out to get his bookmark back. His only fear is that Ryo's dad will be home. He trudges himself to their home and knocks, but no one answers. He overhears noise coming from the back, so he follows it and meets Ryo and her siblings bathing in a makeshift tub. She freaks out, he freaks out, everyone freaks out. Later on, he apologizes and admits that he didn't see much. She then charges him 100 yen for setting his sights on an 18-year-old maiden. This makes him remind her that she stole his wallet. She admits that she thought he would cry himself to sleep and asks if he came for the wallet. In turn, our boy yells that he wants the bookmark back, but gets interrupted when Ryotaro approaches his sister with an arithmetic problem. She doesn't understand arithmetic, so she proceeds to blackmail Hiko into teaching her brother. Unfortunately, he gets roped into teaching all the children. Ryo then asks why the bookmark is important, and he explains that Yuzuki gave it to him. She remembers her from the market, but her thoughts get interrupted by Yamato and Kita showing Hiko their work. He commends all of them on their good work, and they beam with pride one after the other. It becomes a bit rowdy, and they keep calling him Rich Boy, so Hiko properly introduces himself. Unfortunately, Ryo mocks his name, and all the children laugh. After all is done, the kids chorus their thanks and even call him sensei. This touches him, but the moment is short-lived as their father returns home. Our boy has to flee the scene, holding on to Ryo's promise to give him the bookmark later. He arrives home by nightfall and Yuzu welcomes him by the door. She talks about his bath and dinner, but her kindness now hurts Hiko. He turns everything down and goes straight to bed, leaving Yuzuki in quite a sour mood. The next morning, he quips that he didn't get a wink of sleep, and Yuzuki comes to his door, but he keeps her quiet. This changes when he hears Ryo's voice, forcing him to rush to the front door. Ryo begins to tease him as she quips that he likes them small. Hiko then comes to Yuzuki's defense, making the girl blush. In turn, Ryo implies that he was out having fun with her the day before and that he enjoyed seeing her bare body. Our boy tries to deny it, but Ryo makes it worse when she pulls out the bookmark and lies that he gave it to her. This breaks Yuzuki instantly, but she stays quiet. Hiko then struggles with Ryo until the bookmark falls in front of Yuzuki. He explains that Ryo was lying, but Yuzuki proceeds to tear up the bookmark with a smile on her face. Tears then gather in her eyes as she wipes away Hiko's hand and walks off into her room. In turn, our boy squats to gather the pieces as he calmly kicks Ryo out. He's staring at the pieces when Yuzuki comes to invite him to breakfast as though nothing happened. She goes on to do the laundry and Hiko stares at her from the side of his eye, wondering if tearing the bookmark was all it took. She's then startled by the phone ringing and rushes to answer it. Apparently it's Tomoko calling, so Hiko approaches the booth. His sister fills him in on how she's making friends and hosting tea parties and then realizes that it's not the reason why she called. She then wishes him a happy birthday and it lightens our boy's heart. Unfortunately, Tomoko quickly deduces that something is wrong and bugs him to spill the tea. He tells her everything and she breaks into a lecture on flower language, revealing that bellflowers indicate an unchanging love and that she would give it to her special someone too. This breaks Hiko's spirit, so he hangs up and heads straight to his room. He brings out the pieces and begins to glue them together. This goes on until dusk, and Yuzuki enters his room after noticing that he dozed off. She sees the bookmark before Hiko wakes up. He then declares that it means unchanging love and that the sentiment remains the same no matter how it looks. Yuzuki falls to her knees after this and apologizes with tears in her eyes. She explains that he wasn't eating meals with her and it made her feel lonely. He pats her head as he apologizes too, but she grabs the hand and announces that she couldn't forgive him for befriending such a pretty woman when he has her. Our boy just sits there smiling as Yuzuki pummels him to her satisfaction. He finally completes the bookmark and hands it to Yuzuki. She quips that it smells like him and adds that bellflowers also represent integrity. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content.